Namaskar. This is lecture number 6. The other day we were discussing the source of income, taxability, and residental status based taxability. As we have discussed, section 6 deals with the residental status determination of an individual. Number of days stay determines the residental status. Number of days stay within the territorial jurisdiction of India. Let me explain to you as to what territorial jurisdiction of India means. The territorial jurisdiction of India means that area in which the government of India can rule, or the writ, the law of government of India can be implemented. So the territorial jurisdiction would mean the Indian landmass, the land area, which is subject to government of India laws and regulation. The rivers flowing in the country through the various states, that again is an area of Indian territorial jurisdiction. The government can lay down policies for the use and transportation through the rivers. Then we have the sea. 12 nautical miles into the deep sea stand at, let us say, Gateway of India, and 12 nautical miles into the sea, which approximates 22 kilometers. So from the coast into the sea, 22 kilometers, 12 nautical miles is the area which is coming under the Indian territorial jurisdiction. Indian government is entitled to make laws in its territorial jurisdiction, applicable to its territorial jurisdiction. The seabed, you are aware, the seabed is also a source of natural resources. ONGC has its platform into the deep sea. There is deep sea cable laying also, optical fiber cable laying also. So that the seabed and the distance and the water within the surface and the seabed in that 12 nautical miles area, 22 kilometer area, is prone to Indian territorial jurisdiction, falls in Indian territorial jurisdiction. The Indian government can lay down its laws applicable in that area as well. So for example, if ONGC employs a foreigner, a non-resident, to work in its platform, which is located in the distance of 12 nautical miles in the deep sea. So if that foreigner remains in the seabed for, let us say, 182 days or more, he will be resident in India, because that's the area where Indian government will be able to implement its laws. Then comes the airspace. Airspace above the landmass and the sea water, 12 nautical miles, and the landmass. The airspace above it, above that area, into the ether, into the sky, the airspace, is Indian territorial jurisdiction. I am reminded of a very interesting case law. Of course, not an income tax case law. It is largely in the context of Indian territorial jurisdiction. You may recall some years back there was an Italian ship, and the sailors on the Italian ship had shot at two Indian sailors who were in a barge, a small boat, and that small boat was approaching the Italian ship. These Italian sailors on the ship thought that these persons in the barge, I think there were two sailors in the barge, are sea pirates. You have them aplenty, many of them, in Somalia. So they mistook these persons on the barge to be sea pirates. They cautioned them that they shouldn't be approaching the ship. Yet, when the boat was approaching the ship, they shot at these two Indian sailors, who later expired. The matter reached Indian Supreme Court. The issue was, Indian government argued that they had shot these persons in the 12 nautical mile area, which is Indian territorial jurisdiction. So India is eligible to prosecute these Italian mariners in accordance with the laws of India. Whereas these Italian ship owner argued that we were not in the Indian territorial jurisdiction, we were in the international waters. So International Court of Justice, international laws should apply to us and not the Indian laws. Of course, Supreme Court said that it is a determination of fact that they were in the Indian territorial jurisdiction, therefore they are liable to the Indian laws. Indian territorial jurisdiction. Residence will be determined based on the number of days stay in the Indian territorial jurisdiction, as we have discussed now. So, if a person is resident in India based on the territorial jurisdiction, as we have discussed, he will be considered to be resident in India if he has stayed for 182 days or more. Once he becomes resident, we have discussed, all his incomes, Indian or foreign, become chargeable to Indian income tax. Come to the case of origin or source-based taxation. You will appreciate that seated here in India, you may be able to provide certain services to a company located, let us say, in a foreign country, say US. So that foreign company may, let us say, pass on certain jobs to you, certain work to you, which you are executing in India, and the payment is made by that foreign company, that American company, to you in India, to your Indian bank account. Now please understand, when that foreign company makes payment to you in India, the source of that income which you generate out of the services rendered is not the Indian income, it is your foreign income. The source is foreign country, the source is US. So the US government might say that you have earned income from a foreign, from US company which is located in US. So the origin of that income is US. Origin of that income is US. So US government may bring that income to tax in accordance with the law of US. Supposing you have received 5 lakh rupees. Now please understand, you are a resident in India because you are located in India. You are located in the city of Mumbai. So you are resident of India for income tax purposes. So Indian government will recover tax based on the residency. Residential status will lead that 5 lakh rupees, let us say, to tax in India. But the same 5 lakh rupees would also be subjected to tax by the American government because that is originating from America, source-based, origin-based taxation. The American government will say that this income has to be subjected to tax even in US. But please do not be worried. Even if the US government subjects that income to tax based on source or origin-based taxation, there is something known as DTAA, Double Tax Avoidance Agreement. Now, Double Tax Avoidance Agreement entitles the governments to share the taxes. What it means is that same income, in our case 5 lakh rupees, should not suffer tax in 2 countries simultaneously. Please understand, it is not no tax on 5 lakh rupees. It is no double tax on 5 lakh rupees. Indian government and US government will subject it to tax based on residence and origin based, India and US respectively. But the tax paid in US will be allowed to you as credit from the tax liability determined in India. For example, if your tax on 5 lakh rupees in India, let us say, comes to rupees 1 lakh, let us say, I am giving you simple figures, and that 5 lakh rupees, Indian income tax is 1 lakh on 5 lakh rupees, let us say, and that 5 lakh rupees in US has already suffered a tax of, let us say, 80,000, assuming 80,000. So 1 lakh is the tax here, 80,000 is the tax in US. So what would happen is, from 1 lakh rupees, which is the tax liability on 5 lakh rupees, you will deduct, claim the credit, deduct 80,000 rupees which has been subjected to tax in US and pay to the Indian government only rupees 20,000. So double tax is avoided. You will not pay 1 lakh rupees tax in India and also 80,000 rupees tax in US on 5 lakh rupees. You will, even if you have paid 80,000 rupees tax in US by way of tax deduction at source, that much amount, 80,000 rupees, will be allowed to you as credit while determining the taxability in India. So 80,000 rupees will be available to you as credit under DTAA. So source based taxation, origin based taxation, and residential status based taxation. They are 2 different things. You are aware, as students of accounts, students of commerce, you are aware that there are 2 basis methods of accounting: mercantile basis and cash basis. Mercantile is accrual basis. You are very well aware that when you are preparing final accounts, At the end of the trial balance, you are always given certain adjustments. The best example that we can quote is outstanding rent, outstanding salary. Salary for the month of March is outstanding, rupees 10,000. Salary for rent for the month of March, rupees 20,000, outstanding. So what do? You provide outstanding. And how do you do it? You take it to the profit and loss account and show it as a liability. That's how you provide. So when you are providing in the profit and loss account outstanding rent and outstanding salary, what you are effectively doing is reducing the profit. When you are providing, you are reducing the profit. This is mercantile basis. Similarly, you always have an adjustment as commission receivable, interest receivable, say totaling to rupees 25,000, interest and commission. So you take that much income, interest and commission receivable, mind you it is income, on the credit side of profit and loss account, and you show it correspondingly in the balance sheet asset. Why do you do this? Because you are following mercantile method of accounting as against cash basis of accounting. Cash basis of accounting means you account only that much as an income which has been received in cash. Cash means check also, which has come to you in your bank account, or this is in respect of income. And you will also account that much expense only which has been paid during the year, only the payment made towards the expense. So if you have paid salary for 11 months only, you will claim the expense of 11 months only. You will not provide outstanding salary for the last month, 12th month. So mercantile basis and cash basis. Income tax allows you to account your income, to determine your income based on one of the two methods: mercantile basis, which you are aware, accrual basis, or cash basis, actual basis. Actual receipts of income, actual payments towards expenses will be accounted in the profit and loss account, and that will be the net profit or net loss will be generated accordingly. Actual expense payments and actual income receipts. Actual receipts accounted on the profit and loss credit side, actual payment accounted on the profit and loss debit side. What remains is net profit, which is the profit chargeable to income tax. Mercantile basis versus cash basis. I am reminded of a very interesting case law. Idulji Famrose Dinsha, administrator of Idulji Famrose Dinsha versus Commissioner Income Tax. A very interesting judgment dealing with exactly this issue. Exactly the issue of taxability of income. When a person is following, we have discussed section 4 basis, which is the charging section. When a person is following mercantile basis of recording his profit, of recording his income or expenses, mercantile basis of accounting, as you are aware, he will account the outstanding incomes in his profit and loss account, and he would also account the outstanding expenses in his profit and loss account. That will be mercantile basis of accounting. In Idulji Famrose Dinsha case, what happened was this person, Dinsha, had allowed, he later on expired, he had appointed one of his administrators, one of the persons as his administrators. So this administrator, on behalf of Dinsha, while he was surviving, had entered into an agreement with the builder where he entered into a development agreement on the land of Dinsha. Dinsha had a piece of land. On that piece of land, construction was to be made by the builder. An agreement was entered into between Dinsha and builder to construct a property, and that property was to be then sold by builder. Idulji Dinsha had no interest in selling the property. He said, I will give you my property, I will give you my land, you construct. You said, I want this much. It was decided. So this builder started later on, when the agreement was executed, this builder started playing nasty. He started duping Mr. Dinsha. He started manipulating his accounts because payment was to be made to Dinsha based on the profits. He started manipulating his accounts, manipulating his profits. So Dinsha took him to the Bombay High Court. Bombay High Court gave a decision in favor of Dinsha, saying that whatever money is due to Dinsha should be deposited by the builder in a bank account in FD. The court said, we will decide how much to pay to Dinsha. We will decide it later. But now whatever amount is due presently according to your agreement, what may be the final amount, that will be a later issue to decide. Now you deposit that much amount which is now presently payable in an FD. Don't give it to him. Put it in an FD. And that FD has not to be given to Dinsha. That FD has to be specifically kept in a bank. The funds in that FD would be controlled by the High Court, Bombay High Court. Bombay High Court would accordingly give instructions as to what is to be done with that amount of FD. So accordingly, the builder made an FD. He went to the bank. The FD, really speaking, was to be made in the name of the court. But mistakenly, he made the FD in the name of Dinsha. He manipulated, rather, not mistakenly. He deliberately made the FD in the name of Dinsha without Dinsha knowing, or without the builder intimating Dinsha. So interestingly, the FD started yielding interest. Just to give you simple figures, supposing the interest amount was 1 crore rupees. The FD amount was huge. The interest came to 1 crore rupees. So the bank had to give interest to the person in whose name the FD was made. The builder made the FD in the name of Dinsha, when he should have made it in the name of the court, registrar of the court. FD should have been in that name. But he made it in the name of Dinsha. 1 crore rupees interest. Now the department says, income tax department says, it tells Dinsha, this is your money, you pay tax on this. Dinsha says, I don't even know, I never made this FD. The court had never asked this FD to be made in my name. I have never gone to the bank to make this FD. So how can this, the funds are not controlled by me, the funds are controlled by Bombay High Court. I have no ownership of the funds. I have no control over the funds. So how can I have the right to receive the interest of 1 crore rupees? I will not offer this to tax because that is not my income. Interestingly, the department said that this is your income. The matter then again reached High Court for this purpose, to determine who is the owner of the income. The court said Dinsha does not own this money. FD was not made by Dinsha. They were never even aware about the making of FD. So this FD, whatever the amount of FD was, the interest on FD 1 crore rupees does not belong to Dinsha. We will determine at a later date, based on the arguments, as to who is the owner of the FD. So since the FD owner was not Dinshaw, it was not made by him. Even mercantile basis of accounting, which was followed by Dinshaw, is not sufficient, did not prove sufficient to bring that income to tax in the hands of Dinshaw. In short, mercantile basis also has an exception. Merely because you are following mercantile basis and some income is due, is shown to be due to you by the bank, when that income doesn't belong to you, that income cannot be charged to tax in your hands. So what is important is the ownership of the income. If you could recall, we have discussed real income versus something which is known as apparent income. Notional income, real income difference we have seen earlier. You will recall that. So what is important is that real income has to be brought to tax. But here there is 1 crore rupees is not enriching Dinshaw. It is not his ownership. Therefore, even if he follows mercantile basis and the bank shows that it has paid 1 lakh rupees in respect of this FD, which is in the name of Dinshaw, that income does not belong to Dinshaw, even if he is following mercantile basis. So mercantile basis also comes with an exception. We will, in the later class, we will stop here, and in the later class discuss section 10. Thank you very much.